All right, it's time for Red Rain episode 147. Here is your host, Walter Mitchell.
Thank you, Kyle Little Rock Ledbetter. Welcome back, Cardinal fans, to our second YouTube show. And what was it, Kyle? 147th overall, something like that? Somewhere in that ballpark. Um, so,
Yep, this is
appreciate
episode 147.
147. And we appreciate the support last week. It was great. And so we're at it again. And you can vote us off the island if you want. This is uncharted territory for us, but if you keep showing up, we'll keep doing.
What is this, Survivor now? They can just vote us off the island at this point. If we
Yeah,
don't if we don't produce good enough content, they can just dismiss us like it's nothing.
Right. I mean, I've always been told I had a great face for radio, so so I can get it. I understand that, but yeah, today I've been just on the verge of really needing to express my feelings about Budda Baker. So I'm going to do that. It's going to get a little emotional because he is, as much as I hated to do this to Adrian Wilson, Budda Baker has moved into my Mount Rushmore of Cardinals secondary. I have Roger Worley at right cornerback. I have Larry Wilson at free safety. I now have Budda Baker at strong safety, and I have Aeneas Williams at left cornerback. And that's my secondary room all time Cardinals. I mean, when have we ever seen, other than Larry Fitzgerald, a Cardinal make the Pro Bowl 6 out of 7 years? Pat P did too, obviously. Pat P was in there. But, you know, there's something special about Budda Baker that I think that people are somehow forgetting. And I just wonder what's going on with him. But I'd like to go back to a couple of years ago and see, you know, try to put myself in Budda's shoes. I'm going to take that risk. And, you know, because there's just certain things I think we can assume to a degree, maybe we'll take some risks, but to a degree as to what it would have been like to be carried off on a gurney at, you know, against the Rams in that playoff loss, 31-9. Total beatdown the Cardinals took. When Budda stormed the alley, as he always does, and laid a lick on Cam Akers, who then stood over Budda and you know, and sort of taunted him. And Budda was knocked out, and the team came running down and kneeling in prayer, and Budda was strapped to a gurney and taken out of the stadium in an ambulance. That was one of the scariest moments of my Cardinals fandom of all my years. I've grown so attached to Budda Baker. It gives me tremendous pride to know that he's a Cardinal. And it's giving me tremendous consternation to think that may not be for much longer. So, but before I delve into that, I'm curious to ask Kyle, when you think of Budda Baker, what do you think?
So the first thing that comes to mind is this idea of team captain or like leader, because captain and coach are these two terms in sports that are like uniquely associated with leadership in a unique way. Where like when you talk about like a head coach of a professional football team, you address them as coach, whatever, like Coach Mitchell, you would be for your high school football teams, or Coach Gannon or something like that. And that's something that in our society we normally only associate with like doctors and coaches, which is a unique kind of position of leadership. And leadership is kind of in that same sense from team captain. Once you have this idea of you are a leader, you are a captain associated with you in sports, that's normally the first thing that comes up whenever you're talking about someone. And clearly that's been the case for Budda Baker. Beyond captain, the thing I think of is him as a football player. And, he's probably not going to be a Hall of Famer. He's not someone who's recognized as the best at his position consistently from a league wide standpoint, but he is very much a Ring of Honor player with the Arizona Cardinals. He is a all pro player 1 year, or all pro first team 1 year, a couple of multiple Pro Bowls across his career, has been recognized as one of the best at his position, but means something very different to this organization than he might on a national league wide level. And so Budda Baker, when I think of him as the player, I think of Ring of Honor player and consistent Pro Bowls, all pros. But because you have that association of leadership and captaincy, that's something that in sports usually ends up being the first thing you think of when you come to a player who has been bestowed that by their peers, right? When their peers are coming through, especially in football, a sport
Right.
where it is probably more, I don't want to say life or death, but the physical risk of injury and long-term injury is more prevalent in football than it would be in any other sport. And so when you have that level of respect with your peers, naturally that's the first thing that comes up. So captain is the first thing you think of when I think of Budda Baker, and then Ring of Honor, great football player comes in there as well. And someone who means more to that Cardinals organization than he might when telling the story of like NFL history or the history of the safety position or things of those sorts.
Right. Well said. And to document what you're saying about what Buddha means to his peers, is just 2 years ago they ranked him 19th in the best player in the NFL, which for a safety is pretty dang good. And
Mhm.
the clips that they did from George Kittle and Justin Juszczyk, the guys who uh, know Buddha all too well. They were like, you got to keep one eye on the game and one eye on Buddha when you play against the Cardinals. And Buddha's in their heads, and the 49ers have been our nemesis and arch rivals, and Buddha's had whatever success we've had against the 49ers, he has seemed to generate it with some spirited teammates like J.J. Watt and Jalen Thompson. And today I wrote an article on Revenge of the Birds of the 10 players I consider to be returning players from last year's team that I consider to be the 10 toughest players on the roster right now. And I had Buddha tied with James Conner for the number one spot. And it'd be really hard for me to choose between the two of them. But the fact that we have both of them in the building, also, they were guys that could look J.J. Watt in the eyes when it came to preparation, dedication, being at the facility, in terms of leadership, toughness, bringing their toughness and leadership to game preparations, to the games, and a level of accountability all their own. And I've argued from the beginning, I've been arguing this before Gannon arrived, or Cliff Kingsbury, or BA, or any of our coaches, Wiz. I think culture is first. Sort of the tone can be set by the GM and the head coach, but it's the players that that generate the culture. I mean, you can't do it with the players. For example, when I was teaching, AP English, I mean, I had, some years when kids were scoring like through the roof, and, people were saying, congratulations, boy, you must have done it. I was like, no, 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 no. These kids are the ones playing the game. Um, you know, the thing is too, and this is the thing about life, is like there's only so many things you can study, but you have to not only be good at what you can study, but you have to be good at adapting to curveballs and things that come up. in a testing situation during a game, during an exam, whatever, where curveballs are thrown at you. You have to have that wherewithal to be able to seize that moment as well. The spontaneity to do it. That didn't take necessarily planning, it just takes instinct. And Budda Baker to me has all of that. He's got the instincts, he's got such a flair for and love for playing football. And I just want to go back and look at what this last 2 years for him might look like in his eyes, because I've been imagining that left and right. And let me preface this by saying that a lot of the things, fortunately, that I'm going to talk about look like they're becoming resolved in 2 years, like the stuff with Kyler. So I don't mean this to be an indictment on Kyler, because we know what's happened to him. But right now, Kyler's in a great place. I think JJ, I said this on my thread today, and I said that I think Kyler's knocking on the door of the top 10. And if he gets there, I think we're going to be in tremendous shape. I think he's made tremendous strides over the last year. I also think he's mentally tougher. He's physically tougher. He came back from that ACL like a champ. I think JJ Watt influenced that when because Kyler saw JJ probably undergo one of the most epic rehabs ever, in how he came back from a totally torn out shoulder in week 7 against the Texans, and then came back to play in the playoff game. It was just unbelievable. It was Herculean in scope. I mean, it was really stunning. It's too bad by then the mojo of that Cardinals team without Watt was missing, and it wasn't the same as what it was the first 7 games of the season, as we know. But so Kyler, so I want to say that now because I'm really happy where Kyler is. It's taken a while, but it looks like he now is fully invested. And if that's the case, we could be about to see the best that Kyler has to offer as a pro. And he's emerging as a leader and a galvanizer. So very excited about that. But I have to remind myself, if I'm Budda Baker, what I saw and what I heard, might have stuck in his craw a little bit. I would imagine it would. First of all, learning that, that while his teammates were kneeling, Kyler was sitting on the bench with Colt McCoy. I still cannot fathom how in the world that ever happened or why it ever happened. And maybe they were commanded to do that by a coach, which in that case, I would tell that coach, tell him off, because that was a really bad look. If your team is all kneeling for a fallen teammate, you have to be there. I mean, it's an unwritten code that you have to be there. So if Budda saw that photo, which I'm sure he did, he might have been wondering himself, what's up with this? But knowing Budda, he's pretty chill, and he probably, it probably hurt a little bit, but it also probably ran a little bit off his back, because Budda has his own expectations for himself and for the team that he cherishes, so he's going to focus on that. But then to learn that Kyler did not refused to come back into the game, in a game where not only Budda had been knocked out trying to play his best football, even though the chips were totally down, and being the baller that he always is, but in a game where JJ Watt came back from all that effort and rehab, and I'm sure it was painful for him playing in that game, but he wanted to inspire that team and he wanted to be there. I've never seen anything like it. So in a game of that with those kind of elements, to quit at the end of a game was just so unthinkable and egregious. That um, at that point, if players got pissed, which I'm sure they did, it was reasonable. Then we have Kyler went to the Pro Bowl and played a good game there and schmoozed with the other guys, and then came out of that and then went into the to scrub his socials of all things Cardinals related. At that point, I don't know what Budda Baker was thinking. I don't know what anyone was thinking. And it was timed during the Super Bowl weeks. It was all timed up, synced up by the agent. I think the agent gave Kyler horrible advice. And I'm surprised Kyler's father didn't intervene and said, no, we're not going to handle it like this. There are a lot of people to, blame in this. Steve Keim, apparently behind the scene, feeding the media. From what it's been reported, it was Keim who was, explaining the Cardinals' concerns about Kyler's leadership, his dedication, his lack of professionalism at times, his immaturity. That was all coming out, which, if you're going to come out publicly and do this stuff, this kind of backlash is not helpful. And it created a maelstrom of bad will towards the Cardinals, towards Kyler, which wouldn't necessarily be there. Yeah, people can forget a bad playoff game. I mean, it's hard to imagine anyone not having one, particularly it's your first time playing in a playoff game like it was Kyler's. So, but you press on and be a leader from it. But that wasn't happening. And, I said at the time during all that drama, the skipping of OTAs, well, JJ Watt's reaction to losing that playoff game was to show up the next morning to continue his workouts at the Cardinals facility with its warts and all. Um, you know, uh, where what he did for his 2 years in Arizona, every day pausing by Pat Tillman's locker for inspiration, and then going in there and working his tail off, and had a group, a cadre of players in there with him. I mean, those are the guys you dream about being in your building. And, but so not only did Kyler elect to skip OTAs, so did the whole offensive line, except maybe Beacham. I'm not, he was the one I couldn't figure out. Hudson was thinking about retiring. Justin Pugh was thinking about retiring. DJ Humphries wanted another contract. Basically the lines out, no receivers. Marquise Brown was only going to do what Kyler did, so he wasn't going to be there. Hopkins was facing the 6-game of suspension. That's not his cup of tea anyway, so he wasn't going to be there. It was a mess on the offensive side of the ball. No one was there. And then on the flip side, Budda came and participated, and he said he likes to do that for the sake of the younger guys and get them integrated into the system and give them be a good captain. And he was there when actually people could have understood if he needed a few months to recover from this brutal concussion, which fortunately he didn't suffer any spinal damage or this or that, but it was a brutal injury, and one that could have scared the hell out of anyone. Instead, he's back on the field. He's making that effort. We also have the Super Bowl coming to Arizona, which is just galling to think that the players didn't have that as a goal and weren't interested in doing everything humanly possible, especially seeing as the Rams and Bucks just won in their own buildings. It could have been a trifecta. And but the response from the Cardinals team was, from the offensive side of the ball, starting with Kyler, was about the worst that you could do. I made the comment then, and I stand by it today. I already knew then the season was over. You can't come into a season like that, with a divided locker room, with the confusion that was going on, with people not showing up to OTAs. Yes, they're voluntary, but you know what? The best teams get their guys out. They take advantage of what little the NFL gives them. And so, but Budda was there, JJ Watt was there, James Conner was there. I mean, these are guys who see the value of leadership. Guys see the value of the training programs, see the value of going through the process as true professionals. So, it was and I can't imagine every day on that field looking over to the other side and seeing Kyler wasn't there, and seeing that the offensive line wasn't there, seeing that the wide receivers weren't there. I can't imagine that thrilling Budda, and thinking that, hey, last time I was with them, I was being carted off a field, and I'm here. Why aren't they here? So, but Budda's not like, he's not going to go to the media. One thing Budda does do, though, is he will issue caveats to the team via the media and other sorts, and directly to their faces, as we saw in Hard Knocks. He said at the end of the season, he said that it was a good season, but that some guys weren't really doing their jobs. When he said at the end of 2022, and he put it like that, and we saw that. We saw it on HBO Hard Knocks. We saw it in the game action. JJ Watt had an epic season coming back. His hard work paid off. He was able to retire, going out on the top of his game. That was inspirational. And Budda had a phenomenal season. If you recall, he had that brutal high ankle sprain and did a Mahomes and didn't miss a beat, when typically it takes 4 weeks. We just learned from him yesterday that in week 2, he suffered, in the practice for week 2, he had a hamstring tear that nearly came off the bone. And so he had to go on the IR for the first time in his career. And he was back in 4 weeks at like 80% playing. I mean, that's an injury that typically is not going to take, it's going to take longer than 6 weeks. But, this is a guy that wants to play any chance he can get. And I mean, the way that he played, the spirited way that he played in 2022 when the team was down, the way he was trying to lead the team. This was Budda's team. This was JJ Watt and Budda and James Conner. I mean, these were the guys who stood up and tried to lead the team. And, so coming in, so now there's the coaching change. And, and here's the thing. And people need to understand this. I mean, I was kind of surprised that Budda, opted out of OTAs. But then again, I wasn't. After the Gannon hire, and the Austin Fort hire and the Gannon hire. The reason is that his guaranteed money had just come out. Now, and with that contract, the way it was structured, there was an understanding that we're going to revisit if you live up to the contract, which, by the way, Budda Baker is the only Cardinal I know of, other than Larry Fitzgerald, who completely played better as time, lived up to the contract, played to the pay grade, whereas the others the Cardinals signed did not. So he had that going for him. 6 out of 7 years Pro Bowl, or then it was 5 out of 6 years. He had all this going for him, but he had no guaranteed money left. But he knew that with the deal he signed with Steve Keim, that he was going to be taken care of. But then the new leadership comes in. This happens a lot. I'm sure Kyle will have something to say with this in a second. I'm going to take a break. But new leadership comes in, and they're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. We're not going to address this now. We're not going to address the contract now. Michael Bidwill should have intervened at that moment and said, this is a guy we need to take care of. But he didn't. All right. Instead, Michael Bidwill was promoting other guys. That, to me, is a red flag. I don't know how in the world that didn't happen. And, Kyle, this happens a lot when there's change in leadership. One man's treasure isn't another's necessarily, or one man's deal who's now out of the, one GM's deal with a player is now compromised when the new team comes in. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, yeah. So to your point, when a Cardinal player gets a second contract ever, it's a big deal, right? Like, how many first round picks don't get second contracts with the Cardinals? I mean, I'm just going back and thinking in my head, it's like the last 8. I can't even think, have any of them gotten a second contract with the Cardinals at this point, other than Kyler Murray?
Okay, I was listening today on my article.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so in the Bidwill Keim era, from 2013 to 22, it was, drum roll, Tyrann Mathieu. How did that work out?
Well, he didn't finish the second contract.
Right. So, and then, you're talking about third contracts?
No, I'm talking about second contracts.
Let me just go through the second contracts, right? Because then it was David Johnson. How did that turn out?
Did not complete the contract.
DJ Humphries. Well, I think it was extended, but put it this way: DJ was being paid as one of the top left tackles in the league, or close thereabout. And aside from the stellar year he had in 2020, which was outstanding, we got to be honest. As much as we like DJ, his personality and what he brought to the table, I can't even say he was in the top 2 left tackles in his own division during those years, except perhaps in 2020.
I think the easiest way to phrase that is it was a strange situation, right? It was a strange situation with DJ Humphries.
Right. Well, I thought when the first contract came out for him, it's at 15 point something a year, and this was like 5 years ago or whatever. I was shocked because I thought it was exorbitant. I thought he was going to get paid, but not like that. Like close to top left tackle money at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And also since then, you got Kyler Murray and you got Jalen Thompson.
Okay.
So works in progress. Have either one of them played up to their pay grade yet? I think Thompson's been closer, but he came on pretty well at the end last year. So he's trending in the right direction. Kyler came on well at the end. So hopefully he's trending in the right direction. But as of right now, no one has lived up to a second contract in that time more than Budda Baker. I mean, the proof is getting nominated, ranked 19th.
In the Keim era, that's what, starting in 2014? Is that correct? 2014 is the first year that Keim gets 13. There? 13. So 2013. Yeah. So you're looking at close to a representative decade sample. I mean, guys from the 2020 or sorry, the 2021 draft class can now sign extensions. So you're looking
Right.
at close to a decade worth of eligible players, and we've already seen Zaven Collins. It doesn't look like is going to get an extension. So you add another one to the list, and
No.
that's interesting because it's easy to kind of say Budda is the best Cardinals draft pick of the last decade, and there's not really a close second because you don't have a player who excels. And then this brought to the point that I thought was interesting is that if you set a 3-year window to reevaluate on a third contract and the player still excels, then you would be looking up and saying, yes, let's do the third contract while we have a new regime coming in. We want this person to be a
Right.
foundation. Or the flip
Yes.
side of that is no guaranteed money left, new general manager, we're starting a rebuild. Let's just cut our losses, let him go somewhere else and see if we can get draft capital out of it, which I'm sure you'll get to as we continue here, the possible trade scenarios that were on the table.
I know. I don't want to get to that, but yeah. So I mean, but then the combination of not only being sort of um, backburnered by the new administration, I mean, to the point where Buddha requested a trade. He didn't scrub his socials. He didn't make this big brouhaha. He just said straight out, if you're not going to redo my contract as I was promised or assured when I did the other contract, if I had, lived up to the contract, which I put it all out there for you. I put myself on a gurney for you. And if you're not going to honor what I did last year coming back from that injury, I mean, and I'm giving you all I got, and in the same play, you're at the same time you're lifting up guys who haven't come anywhere close to playing at the level where I've played. And you're pumping them up and saying how great they are. So, at that point, he's got to be thinking, I've lost this team. This was my team. This team doesn't believe in me anymore. They're not going to extend my contract. So then they get to an agreement where they don't trade him, but they settle some of the guaranteed money issues. So he comes back last year. And now here we are a year later, and he's in the last year of his deal, and there's no guaranteed money, but he's in the building working. He's saying all the right things, which he did yesterday. But I know Budda Baker well enough to know that deep down inside, I can see it in his face. He, like a lot of Cardinals fans, are resigned to the fact this is coming quickly to an end in Arizona. I mean, something would have been done by now. They would have let this be Buddha's team. And what's shocking to me is with a defensive coordinator, defensive minded head coach, why you wouldn't want to hitch your wagon to him more than anybody else on this roster, other than maybe James Conner, is beyond me. And people will say, oh, well, he plays safety and it's not that valued. It's wrong. He's one of 11 guys on a field making plays left and right. It doesn't take the position out of it. Because when you have a leader like that, when you have a bell cow, and I can tell you this, I live in New England. People here revere Budda Baker. I mean, unbelievable. The times I walk around with this hat around Foxborough, I get pulled over. Hey, how about that Budda Baker? We would love to have him here. Every team would love to have Budda Baker on their team. Would love it. I mean, and so, if they open up the trade interest, it's going to be there. But that's not the solution I want. I mean, I want this to be Budda's team. I want him to take us to where we need to go because I know he can do it. I mean, think of this. All right. He exceeded the contract. He played above pay grade when the precedent was that you could get your bag as a Cardinal and then coast and then play half-assed and not even play hard anymore, like Matthew did, David Johnson did, unfortunately. I mean, you know, I mean, was a Cardinals type precedent. So he could have followed suit. Instead, he had higher, he honored that contract in ways that other players didn't and haven't. And it's so special to me that he did that, particularly at his position where he needs to be tremendously physical. I mean, look at the way he tackles. He comes downhill as well as any defensive player in the NFL. I don't care what position. Put him on the field, and he's a baller. Now, over the years, he's shown he's stronger near the box than he is in deep coverage. Although he intimidates people coming up from deep coverage. So mixing him around, I mean, playing him more in the box is probably a good idea at this point. But, and then using him on exotic blitz packages and stuff like that. I mean, the guy's just got too much talent, too much want to. And he talk about desire. And here's the thing I just want to, so here's the thing that so impressed me yesterday is that this is how gracious he is. In the interim, to see some of his teammates who've been talked up doing better and looking now more on track, he's grateful. He's thankful. He's talking them up himself. What a teammate. When I'm sure it hurt, it says he said to the team, it hurts my heart. I am sure, knowing Budda Baker, that where he is with this team now hurts his heart. Because if anyone deserved to be the face of this team over these past 7 years, it's hands down Budda Baker. It's not even a horse race. I mean, Connor's been here 3 years. He's got, if he keeps doing that, you put him on the same plateau because the guy's an absolute bell cow and a baller. But to have Connor and Budda on the same team, and I think the world of Dennis Gardeck as well as a baller. There we've got, go check out my top 10. A couple of them might surprise you, but I got 10 ballers on that list that I'm really, really high on and really, really proud of. And we got guys now knocking on the door of that top 10. We're gaining ground on being more physical. I had Jalte Frohold on there. Dude is a baller. Will Hernandez. Dude is a baller. I mean, we got some physical guys now up front that move people and then pancake them on top of it. I have a running back, another running back on there, Amari DiMercato. I've never seen anything like it. I mean, ask Patrick Queen how easy it was to blitz against the Cardinals. Ask Drake, Greenlaw of the 49ers. Fred Warner. Dude takes the romance out of the blitz and stuffs guys in the hole. And not only that, when they asked him to run the ball, he got a 5.0 clip. I mean, the way he ran the ball against two of the top 3 defenses in the league, against the Ravens and the 49ers, we didn't miss a beat. Dude was running his tail off and playing physical. And that's why I'm so excited about the Cardinals team. And I want to give the Cardinals players, see, when you set the tone, it gets contagious. It's not until your players play like that you can boast a culture of physicality. And we've got it going now because I think J.J. Watt set a huge tone and left it for this organization and showed the way. I mean, look at Kyler now. He's doing J.J. Watt things. He's in the building every day doing what JJ did. He's holding court there. He's bonding with players. He's working out with them. He's, eye to eye with them. And that's so exciting that this is all happening. But for crying out loud, I mean, to, you know, to sort of leave Buddha in the dust when finally the physicality that he helped to create is now becoming more pervasive than ever, just feels so empty to me, and such a poor show of faith. If it happens, I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, he's got to be careful that I mean, he's got no guarantees until he's playing week 1. So, but knowing him now, I think he's just going to do what he does. He's going to be a leader. He's going to fight his tail off. He said so in the media. So Kyle, how do you see this coming to, a conclusion?
Well, we talked about this on the last episode that we did a little bit, and I think the points that you just outlined kind of highlight the same point that I made last week, which is just, even if you don't think it's gonna be a contract that ages well, or even if you think you shouldn't pay a 29-year-old safety, because that is one of the positions that doesn't particularly age well, and Buddha's had a recent injury history. Like, I understand those reasons, but just to not even go to the negotiating table, or to not even entertain the possibility of working out an extension of some sort, that's one of those things that I look at, and it's like, regardless of all that, you should still treat your Ring of Honor players with more respect on the way out the door, because ultimately the contract negotiation or whatever you might go through is not going to be worth the bad will that ultimately comes about from treating Ring of Honor players poorly. And that's the same thing that's happened with a lot of these guys. I mean, we know about Patrick Peterson and the feud that he's had with the organization. Even Larry Fitzgerald on the way didn't get to end the way he wanted to, and hasn't really been welcomed back with open arms since the end of his tenure with the team. So it's just, Adrian Wilson is another. I mean, I know you just replaced Adrian Wilson on your Arizona Cardinals all-time starting 22, but the way that he was dismissed out of the organization at the end, like, it's just, you can treat your Ring of Honor players with more dignity and respect on the way out. And it doesn't have to always be about trying to get the best deal or the best timing on the player, especially if you're just going to leave Buddha in this limbo. Because sometimes respect could have just been trading him last year when he requested. If it's like, we're not even going to negotiate on a contract, then, and we're going to guarantee some of his money for this year, but not negotiate any extension. And if he wants to go, then it's okay to let him go, especially at the time then. It's just, I don't understand what these last 2 years have served, other than just creating, a whole lot of stress for Buddha, and a whole lot of bad will around that.
Yeah, that was really well said, well summarized, and I'm still hoping and praying for the best, because he's. And by the way, I mean, my proudest moment as a Cardinal was watching Adrian Wilson get so emotional with the Hallis Trophy and the Cardinals Red Rain confetti coming down on him. And he was a guy that decided to stick with the Cardinals. He had bigger offers to go elsewhere in free agency. He was a guy whose second contract worked out. And so what I should do is have a 5-man, Mount Rushmore.
Yeah.
And, we'll play a 3-safety lineup.
This is the thing. You take the players you can get, right? Like, this is the thing we were talking about, where safety is not a valued position. You'll take all pro players where you can get them. Like, it doesn't matter what position they play. And the best teams know how to put those players in a position to succeed, like Baltimore did with Kyle Hamilton, where, he goes from roaming safety to guarding Travis Kelce in the playoff. Like, they know how to put those players in positions
Right.
to succeed.
Right. You look at Christian McCaffrey today, signing a 2-year extension at 19 a year.
Yeah.
I mean, for my money, if we're going to tackle him finally, Budda Baker's got to be on the field.
I'm up
There's
here.
no question about it.
I'm up here in 49er country. We have their games on the station, so I've been working,
Yeah,
watching a bunch of the games. Bargain. They got a bargain on Christian McCaffrey
they
at
did.
that 2 years, 38 million.
Right.
It's what he
And
means to that team is ridiculously important.
correct. He's a baller.
Yeah.
And people would say you're crazy to pay a running back 19 million a year. They say he's crazy. You're crazy. Um, but not in his case. It's special, you know. Um,
How long ago was
and
it? Let me ask you. How long ago was it? As recently as 15, 18 months ago that we were talking about how Kyle Shanahan can just insert any running back into his system. Running backs don't matter. He can turn anyone into a 150-yard a game rusher.
right,
And they completely reinvented themselves, right? Getting McCaffrey completely reinvented Kyle Shanahan's entire reputation as an offensive coordinator by bringing him in and making him into
right,
the bell cow back.
yeah. And the amazing thing is, Kyle, is when McCaffrey came via the trade, I was thinking, well, good for them, but not if he keeps getting injury prone. Because, that was the thing. I mean, he was all pro, both running back and flex. I mean, how many players have done that?
It's like
So, I
two.
mean, his value as an offensive playmaker, I put it up there in the top 5 with any offensive playmaker. Leave the quarterbacks out of it. But a playmaker, he's top 5 with Travis Kelce, with some of the real elites of this game. So good for them for getting him. But we got to find a way to get to McCaffrey this year, and to his credit, that's the irony, is he's played, and they're like in game week 10 with a 20-point lead, and they're still pounding the rock with him. I mean, Shanahan's a little like, he's like Wiz was with the Cardinals. He was like, if you could run, you're playing right now. In the fourth quarter, I don't care if we're up 40 points. If you want to play, you should play. I mean, I see Larry Fitzgerald in games like that, and I'm cringing. Like, Larry, get off the field. But, and Larry wanted to play, so he's out there. And we're ahead by 30. And he's taking hits. But it was the same thing with McCaffrey. And you have to, wow. I mean, McCaffrey was all for it. And the weird thing was he coughed up that, fumble in the Super Bowl. That was so uncharacteristic of him, particularly in that timing. And I'm sure that's like stuck in his craw. What a
Oh,
competitor.
for sure.
We need competitors to take him on. And
I mean, he had what,
so
like seven
final thought.
touchdowns in 2 games against the Cardinals last year. I think the game I
Oh,
went to in Santa Clara, he had 4, but I think he had like 7 touchdowns in 2 games against the Cardinals.
he had one touchdown where he caught it wide open on the sideline and fell down at the 10-yard line and got up and ran in
I
untouched.
remember that. That was funny. I
I mean,
remember
don't get
that.
me started on that. I mean, that was just, you know, uh, those 49er games.
To answer your original
Let's just hope.
question,
Yeah.
to answer your original question about Budda Baker, where this is headed is either I don't know what the Cardinal if he walks in free agency at the end of this year. I don't know if they get like a 5th-round compensatory pick or a 3rd-round compensatory pick. I'm not sure how it works, but it'll basically be they take the compensatory pick when he walks in free agency, and if at the trade deadline some team is willing to offer them value to make it worth the 11 games they won't get with him, the rest of the way. Like if when the 49ers acquired Chase Young at the deadline, like the Washington took the third round compensatory pick then instead of waiting to see what Chase Young would be worth when he hit free agency. But if they think they'll get a fifth round compensatory pick when he walks and someone's offering a second or a third round pick for Budda, then they'll take that offer. But I think more than likely it just ends with them getting a compensatory pick when he signs somewhere else in free agency.
Except that Cardinals are going to have tons of cap space next year, and they should be buyers in free agency. So it'll negate whatever Buddha's going to get them back in return. Not to, playing that game is so uncertain. I mean, we lost a draft pick because of Josh Dobbs. We lost a fourth round comp pick because of Dobbs qualifying for, the way the formula is, I wouldn't trust it. And so if they don't want to sign him to an extension, in my opinion, they should trade him. I mean, he deserves that. And plus, it feeds into your point. There's more dignity in getting traded, and you get a good package in return than there would be if it all played out and he just signs next year with another team and the Cardinals just let him walk like Hassan Reddick. So, I mean, given that choice, I agree with you. I mean, there's that component of how are you going to treat a Ring of Honor player, and how's it going to look down the road? So, leaving whatever it is, with Buddha's so amenable and he's so gracious, he will handle this well, whatever it comes to. And I don't think he'll ever, badmouth the team publicly. Privately, maybe. Because this sucks for him. It really does. It truly sucks for him. And, my heart aches for him, because if anyone deserved to be the guy right now and leading this team forward, it's Budda Baker. Your final thought?
I think he deserved that dignity last year, right? When he was going through the contract negotiation and quietly requesting a trade. I think he was connected to the Eagles in a trade. I think he deserved that dignity last year. And at this point now, it would just be, the timing is weird, but we're just going to do right by you kind of situation. And no indications have been that that's going to be the case. Maybe things change at the trade deadline, but I would imagine he's on the team until at least October at this point, and more than likely probably to the end of the season. And we should say with the trade, if you do trade him, like, don't ship him to the purgatory of Tennessee or something like that. Like send him to a place that he actually wants to go to with a chance to accomplish whatever his goals may be. Because I don't want to necessarily say somewhere he can win a championship. Maybe he's really focused on getting that third contract from someone. I don't know where or what that might look like, but just sending him somewhere that aligns with his goals, because there's no real point in keeping this quagmire going on if you have respect for the person. If the person is unhappy with the situation, if the team doesn't have plans for him in the long-term future, just do right by the Ring of Honor player at the end and treat him with a level of respect out the door. Because at the bare minimum, even if he's not a captain, a leader, a Ring of Honor safety, part of Walter Mitchell's official 22 best Cardinals of all time, like, even if he isn't that person, he still deserves a level of respect on the way out the door. And then you factor all of that stuff in, and it should be, if the bare minimum is showing him respect, they should go above and beyond to accommodate for him. Maybe it's not the perfect situation, but at the very least, you're thinking about the person when you're trying to resolve this matter.
Yeah. It's just hard to imagine it's come down to this, but I'm so glad you brought up the Ring of Honor stuff, because that's a perspective that ought to be taken into consideration based on the history of the sort of animosity that's occurred. Yeah, I think, imagine him pairing up with Kyle Hamilton in Baltimore. Ooh. Or
It'd be
would make up
great.
for Fitzpatrick in Pittsburgh. I mean, be the strong to their free. Oh my God. I mean, so, you know, I'd love to see Buddha play in a Super Bowl. He deserves it. And I think he'd be electric. But here's the thing, about Budda Baker. If you didn't know it before, what the season after the concussion proved was he's going to ball until he can't, until he's physically unable to do it. And, I mean, which last year was first time in his career he was on the IR for 4 weeks. So we can't say he's injury prone per se based on games played. Yes, he got nicked up at the end of 2022 as well with the shoulder, but by then it was like second to last or last game of the season. So, he's shown his longevity. And boy, oh boy, can this guy tackle. I mean, form tackling. And by the way, who tackles like that is Kyler Murray. He grew up tackling like Buddha. The two of them, you know, I mean, Kyler made the best tackle of the year last year, probably. I mean, he is unbelievable. And the old, clips of him playing Pop Warner and taking kids down at the knees, firing in there like a ball of fire. It's impressive. So, but I think here's the thing. What's mystifying to me is no sooner did Monty Ossenfort take the job, he's seen shaking hands with Buddha in the hallway, and then makes a statement that Buddha represents everything the Cardinals represent, or represents everything the Cardinals hope for in a player. But it just doesn't seem like the words and the music are matching. If that's the case, this situation wouldn't be lingering on, and it would have been initiated by Ossenfort, and Buddha would have been taken care of. And for whatever reason, that's not happening. So I'm kind of with you. I think that it's Fisher cut bait for the Cardinals. If they're not going to sign him, don't stretch him out. It's not fair. Trade him, get the most you can for him. Don't try to think, compensatory picks, because next year we expect to be very active in free agency. But it just doesn't take away from the excitement of the season completely for me. Obviously, I'm very excited for what's coming up. I'd be even more excited and thrilled if we lock down Buddha and make him a Cardinal for life. I know what we're getting from the guy. I mean, he's only knows how to play one way. I mean, if there was a year where he could have, been a little tentative, it would have been in 22 following that brutal concussion. Instead, he played lights out. I mean, he played his tail off under adverse situation on a losing team where half of his teammates didn't show up for OTAs. It was just in a year that the Super Bowl was played in Arizona. Just, demoralizing from that standpoint. So thanks to all of you. Thanks to Kyle Little Rock Ledbetter. We're going to have some guests coming up. Got some invites out. And really appreciate again your support. Please let us know in the comments, and at Revenge of the Birds and on YouTube. It'd be nice to hear from you. If there's anything that you want to challenge, anything you want to support, the comments are there for you, and I will try to get back to you on that. So, but thanks to all of you, and thanks, and hope that The red rain of Super Bowl confetti showers down on you into the red, red sea one day. Red rain.